I personally feel like everyone looks for something to believe in. And I know I'm ripping off the Poison song at that point, but it's true. I think we all just want something to believe in, whether it's God, whether it's the powers of the universe, whether it's aliens, whether it's, reptile people in office and government. Everyone wants something to believe in. Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Canadian Talkin Shop podcast. And once again, we've got nothing but sunny skies here in Milton, Ontario. Just enjoying every little bit of this warm weather I can before winter shows up, and it's coming. But to join me on this beautiful sunny day in the different part of the country is our good friend, our co-host of the show here, the king of the Cheems memes and the funny little yellow dog, Mr. Mike Berikoff. What's up, brother?
Not much, just hanging out in front of the local Sam's store. Anybody in BC might remember this from your childhood. Your parents decide to go talk to the person at the till and leave you hanging around to go browse around in the clothing racks.
Oh shit, man, that brings me back to can stay here with so and so at the checkout, the cashier, and I'll be right back. Wow. That would never happen today. That would never happen today because people just progressively got shittier as time went on. But that must be either a BC thing or it's a West Coast. Is it American or is it Canadian?
As far as I know, I thought it was all Canadian, like all across. And then when you told me you'd never heard of it, I was like, okay. So I'm thinking maybe it's just a BC thing. I traveled the States when I was younger, and I don't remember seeing any of them. The Sands thing was more of my mom's place to shop. My dad never really ventured into those places.
I'm just heading to the wiki right now. So it was a chain of discount department stores in Canada that began in Winnipeg, Manitoba. They had more than 350 stores in the late 90s, but by May 2005, after it emerged from bankruptcy protection, this was reduced to 142 outlets. And the chain's head office was actually in the town right next to me, Mississauga, Ontario. And its main distribution center and store support office complex was located in Winnipeg. So it stood for Surplus Army Air Force Navy, and that was in Winnipeg in 1947. And from there, the number of stores grew to 200 in Western Canada and Ontario. So there was some in Ontario. That's what I mean. Like, just because I don't remember it or I don't recall doesn't mean it didn't exist out here. I'm just seeing if it's still up and running. No, it's not. So they officially folded everything in August of 2008. But
I was working at a clothing store here. Yeah, I knew they had shut down because we had a few people that moved from Sands, and they were furious. They're like, I worked there for years, and now I'm at the bottom of the totem pole. And it's like, oh, shitty deal. But yeah, that's actually how I knew it got shut down, because we were getting hires in, and I was like, holy fuck, Sands still existed? That kind of thing. And that's probably why you didn't notice it. If they would have did a better job with their advertising and marketing, maybe they would have hit that demographic for people like you. But instead, you didn't even notice the place. So.
Well, I mean, I just don't recall. There's so much from my childhood that I don't remember. But then again, I can remember franchises and stores like department stores like Byway and Kmart. Yeah, because you might not have even had Byway. That could have been a Eastern Canada thing.
Yeah, Byway I hadn't heard of. Kmart, yeah.
Consumers Distributing. Have you ever heard of them?
No, that sounds like a fucking management department.
Yeah, it does. But it was a department store also back in the day that I can also remember, but I can't remember Son, and it's driving me mental. Even when I used to visit out in BC from the ages of 10 to 16, I don't quite remember, but the name kind of it rings a bell. But I can think of things like you have like London Drugs and Walgreens and stuff like that. I believe you don't have Walgreens. No, it's an American thing.
No, Walgreens. And I swear, like, anyone in BC seeing this photo, like, the smell of this place. Like, this place had like a unique smell. and it wasn't a good one. It was just this weird fucking like fabric musky ass smell.
Maybe
Yeah,
I've been sheltered from it. Maybe the old man's just like, no, this is not a store for you.
it's a woman's store too, like, or sorry, a ladies
A
store.
woman's store. It's a department store with a women's section. It's a woman's store. Listen to this. All right. Well, we've had enough. This is already getting off the rails talking about Son and all these stores. But I wanted to bring everyone in, welcome everybody to yet another off the rails episode apparently. But we have a giveaway on Instagram and Facebook right now, an Amazon giveaway that started on the 20th, and we will be announcing a winner sometime tomorrow, and that tomorrow is going to be on the 2nd. So by the time you're hearing this, you're going to be hearing this on the 1st of October. So on the 2nd, we're going to announce a winner, and they're going to get a $20 gift card towards Amazon. And so take a screenshot, let us know that you're listening, tag at CTS_pod on Instagram or CT Shop pod on Facebook. I really wish Facebook could have gave me CTS_pod. Almost everywhere else on my social medias are all CTS_pod, but that jerk Zuckerberg's just not letting me have it. Today's episode is a different one. Today's episode is a topic that probably many people would not think of us talking about, and that's religion. And whether people know it or not, Mike is a practicing Christian, and I'm very spiritual in nature. So we're coming together to have a conversation today to just kind of touch on religion and touch on Mike's experience with religion. And we're going to get right to it. What age did your connection with God build? When did you discover God? How old were you at that point?
So I'd say connection and introduction. I'd separate those. So introduction was childhood, where actually in kindergarten I was in a Christian school in Nelson, BC, where I have two half brothers, and they were attending. I believe they were in like grade 3 or 4. And so when I had moved with my mom, I was put into this Christian school, and I always thought, is this going to be really different? Because I'd moved from a quote unquote like public school. And the only thing that was really different for me was that they lined up outside, and then I think it was once a week, and it wasn't on the Sundays, but they did like a prayer type deal, because the church was like basically kitty corner to where the school was. So I remember at that point in my childhood, it was just another place to go to school. Yeah, I was learning about something, but I didn't have a connection so much. So that's why I separate that from introduction. So it was involved in my life through that. And then when I moved with my father, there was a church in town where I was starting to attend Sunday school. And I think at first it was because he didn't have a babysitter for me. So that was one where I kind of like, I learned the stories. I was really interested in Christmas and the story about Jesus being born and things like that. So I really clung to that. But when it came to learning anything else, other than the Christmas, right? Because when you're a kid, that's kind of where I was focused. Christmas gifts, people are together, happiness, blah blah blah, right? I started kind of thinking of it as just like another day at school. So I didn't really appreciate it that much for anything they were trying to teach me. So I remember begging my dad. I was just like, I don't want to be in this anymore.
How old were you at that point?
So when I lived with my dad till I was 10. So I believe I was probably about 7 or 8.
Okay, so you were pretty young then, with both your introduction
Yeah.
and your own fascinations with it.
Yeah. So with that, when it came to me actually like coming to the realization of believing in God, believing that God is real, was later on in life, during times of struggle, where I felt I had no one, and I connected with God in a few different ways that I felt was natural, which made me believe. also got me more involved in scripture and going to church and trying to see the connection there as well. But that didn't happen until I was probably about, I think I was in my 30s.
Oh, okay. So you went a really long time then before you started really
Yeah,
developing your relationship.
I was for I'd say once I moved from my dad's, religion wasn't really an important part or a big part of my life at that time. I actually focused a lot on atheism. If anything, I was angry at God because of things in my life I'd blame God for. I'd be like, if God existed, well, why did this happen to me? Why am I in this situation? If God existed, why is there pain in the world if God existed, et cetera, et cetera. So I was one of those people where, God's not mentioned in my house, we don't talk about that here and all this other stuff. So I really went down a path of just denial slash not believing. I didn't want to believe in any religion. If anything, I was just angry at everything. Um, and I remember living in that mindset, and I didn't really have peace spiritually in that mindset. Whereas now I feel like when I'm thinking about God and spiritualization with that, I'm in a better place mentally. Like it's kind of not even so much to say just being Christian, but the negativity I had with just something as not believing. Like I can't really say atheism as much as I just didn't have respect for anyone's beliefs in a certain time in my life where it was like, oh, you believe in that? Wow, you're really ignorant. Like, you believe there's another being out there, you're ignorant. You believe that when someone passes away that there's a spirit of them, well, you're ignorant. Like, it was like I took atheist just all the way
To the umpteenth parallel.
as far as it would go. Debating people online, all types of stuff, just there's no way you're going to prove that God exists and things like that. And then it was a realization that was given to me. It was just all my fight trying to prove that something doesn't exist. Like, who obsesses over that? Just trying to spend their time proving that things don't exist, disrespecting others for their beliefs, et cetera, et cetera.
Talib. Talib. I got that awful cough going on right now to answer your question. But let's rewind a little bit. Let's go back more so to how your experience with God was while you were going to Sunday school and you were going to, your regular school. What was your connection with God like at that point, and what was it like being religious and going to public school?
So people knew I went to church. I can't say that I stood out, but I would openly say that, yeah, I believe in God. In that time and the town, so the town was Salmo, BC. It was a small town in the Kootenays. And when I think about this place, I actually think a lot of them were very religious. Um, so so being Christian was fairly normal. Whereas when I moved and came to like high school, if I was full out saying that I believed in God, you could be confronted. Say like you're wearing a cross, people are going to question you and go, what, you believe in this, just out of nowhere? You know what I mean? And that's part of what made me so comfortable denying and defying against it as well, because when I moved, I couldn't fit into anything, I felt. And just being defiant in general helped me fit in, at least in my mind sense at the time. But it didn't really do anything for me but bring toxicity in my life.
So you started then at that point turning your back towards religion because you saw it was easier to fit in by being opposed to religion? Is that when your disconnect with God started happening?
And it is just, at that time I didn't have a belief. Like I said, if something bad happened, like the Iraq war was going on and all this shit, and I was like, well, how the fuck can all these people die? How can all these people be, executed? How can our soldiers be beheaded? Things like this and that. And I blame God. If he's the ever so powerful being, how come he can't fix this? And looking back, it's what brought me kind of out of that was one of my pastors. They had mentioned this theory called misinterpretation of God. So if I'm your parent and I'm like, you need to do this, God's saying you need to do this, you're being raised by the strap. Like, I wasn't raised by the strap, but I'm bringing up a point here. And then you go, well, God's evil. This is what I taught was about God. That person misinterpreted the message, right? So there was a few churches I went to that I didn't connect with, and this one I did because I started taking the message more. Whereas there's degrees of Christianity I didn't understand, like the hardcore Catholic Christianity where, you commit a sin, you've got to go into the box and confess all your sins and do
The
like
box.
20 Hail Marys or whatever, right? Like, so that was where my mindset was as well, because that school was a Catholic school from what I remember. So I've thought of God as really strict, really like there was no happiness in God, so to say. So that's what led me, my aunt, which brings up my aunt, my great aunt Tian. She used to come down from Ontario. She'd drive across all the provinces to BC to come visit in the summer, and she went to church. She was in the choir in church, in an Anglican church, and so when she'd come down, she'd have no one to go to church with her. No one would go. So to me, I was like, this relative just wants someone to go to this place. You know what I mean, right? I wasn't really into going all in with God or whatnot at the time, but I was like, she wants to go to somebody. She's been here 3 weeks of the 2 months, and nobody wants to go to church with, poor lady, right? So I remember going a few times because I enjoyed singing. So I thought too, and she explained it to me different, we sing, we have fun. We're not just, sitting there like drones, kind of like, and she wasn't a huge fan of the Catholic Church, right? And she was very openly spoken about it. So when I went to the Anglican church, so you got these people singing, and they're dancing, and it's an upbeat, positive environment. And I was like, wow, this is actually pretty cool. And so when she'd come down, I'd go to church with her, even though I quote unquote wasn't, like attending church regularly or reading a Bible or anything. I just go with her. And then I started really getting into it. And I found the gospel church, which is like an amped up version, kind of, where if you look down in the States, you've got everybody singing like hallelujah, and you've got like 8 choir singers, and they're at the top of their voice just singing as loud as they can, right? And just tons of energy in the room. So I went to the gospel church that was in my town, and it was the same kind of thing, and I was just like, wow. So it gave me this realization that, because in Christianity they preach forgiveness, right? But on certain angles you can't see that forgiveness because it's so stern. So walking into an environment that's so stern, how do you think you're going to be forgiven if you stole the pack of gum last week, right? And you want to admit it. And you go into this place that's happy and welcoming, you're more likely to kind of let it out for God, like fully be there. And so that was when I kind of had that experience, like God exists in a way that connects with me. I don't know if that kind of makes sense, but I started learning more about the different angles of Christianity, and how, there's some here that are really, really, focused. There's other ones where they have gays in the church. You know what I mean? So that's what brought me into Buddhism, because I was like, okay, well, there's different religions and there's all these different angles of God. Well, what other angles of higher being are there and whatnot? And so I started looking, just seeing what other religions were about. I remember in school, we did a thing about religions and stuff, and I got handed this book, and it was just this book of all the different religions in the world. And it was like this thick, it was big. And all I could think of at the time was Christianity and Buddhism. So I was like, is there more gods? Is there this or that? So I'd probably spent about 4 or 5 years just obsessing over the different religions and trying to find, well, which one connects to me? Which one do I belong to? Is this like a club or something, like kind of mentally?
Is this your teenage years?
Yeah, this would be teenage years, okay. Kind of going through the motions and whatnot. And then back and forth before I met up with the pastor that kind of gave me the revelation that there might have been a misinterpretation to me.
So before we get into that, let's focus on your teenage years and religion, because you mentioned something that was really interesting to me. You mentioned, stole a pack of gum. How am I gonna, how is my religion gonna affect this decision that I've made and whatnot? How did religion come into play when you were, quote unquote, being a kid? So if you were being silly or you were, being sinful in certain ways, but in all actuality, you're just being another teenager. What was that like? What was that struggle like internally for you, or was there one at all?
Defying God, I felt like it didn't matter what I did, I was just gonna go to hell. Like, I'm gonna drink with the boys on Friday night, you know, maybe talk some shit about some people, like, or whatever, could be scandalous or whatever, like, am I gonna go straight to hell? So I was more rebellious because I was just accepting that, and then that would contradict my beliefs, because I was like, if I'm thinking I'm just going to go straight to hell, how can I not believe in this entity? Because in my opinion now, it's like, if you don't believe in God, how can you believe that hell exists? Right. So that's one of the things I caught myself on numerous times. Even when I didn't believe, I'd have this thought like, oh, I guess I'm going to hell. I'm doing this today, I guess I'm going to go to hell, whatever. Right. But yet on the same tongue, I don't believe in God or that he exists. But I do believe that there was a punishment at the end of the day, at the end
That's a
of,
direct result from religion, aka God.
yeah.
So yeah, I find that funny too, because a lot of us will always go in our darkest moments like, please God help us and whatever, and start begging for fucking God. Or we'll say just all these different references like that, just, oh, for God's sake, and stuff like that, like all these Christian style words. But yet, especially like myself, I'm guilty of this, and I'm far from religious in the like the traditional praying to a God Christian way. So I find that really funny that people do that. What does that make you feel when people do that hypocrisy? Like, I don't believe in God, but yet I believe there's a heaven and hell.
It if they're willing to have the conversation, it opens up the conversation to kind of let them know that in their own mind, God exists. It's like someone going, well, I hate God, and they don't believe in him. Well, how can you hate something that's not real? The other one I think of is Christmas. Christmas is a perfect example.
Oh,
That's the one that makes me tick. If there's anything with the religion stuff, and there's even before I was like, when I was like anti, I'd so to say, you're gonna celebrate Christmas, but Jesus doesn't exist and God doesn't exist and those stories don't exist, but you're gonna take the pleasures from it. You're gonna take the pleasures from that celebration. And it's like me celebrating Hanukkah. It's not my place. There might be some benefits for that, but that's not my place. It's not my religion. So I do have some when it's kind of like a happy holidays, and you've got a full atheist person that will talk shit. I don't know the word for it about God, religion, and beliefs. Yet they're going and they're getting a tree and they're celebrating Christmas with their family. Like, I'm not saying don't celebrate Christmas. Go ahead, buy people gifts the same day. But it's like to be like, I'm celebrating Christmas. Your kids are all like celebrating Christmas. Like that's a Christian holiday. That grinds my gears. Like, but at the same time, I'm not going to those people and going, you shouldn't be celebrating Christmas. It's just I kind of look at the hypocrisy. Like, you're gonna say God doesn't exist, yet you're gonna celebrate the holiday. You know what I mean? And also too, what's their definition of God? Like, is their definition of God just an overlooker of all of these religions?
what's
Or
your
is it,
definition of God?
I look at Christianity as like, that would be my religion and following, but there's God, and then there's the Son, Jesus Christ, which is the Son of God, which kind of has the same powers as God, I guess, or as clout as God, so to say, if I was to try to define it. But
2021. Jesus Christ has got just as much clout as God. Like, what
yeah,
the fuck?
exactly. So there's a hip way to hit it to the kids.
Shit is lit, yo.
Yeah. So, but yeah, like, I guess it's hard to say it without offending people, but God would overlook everything, in my opinion. So, like, you're talking Buddhism, well, God's above that, looking over all of that. Does God condemn you for not believing in Christianity? No, but I do believe that's the right path, so to say. I'm not saying that I'm not one of those people that's like, if you don't believe, you're going to hell. I'm not one of those either. See, I've had a lot of different situations where Christians could look at me and go, you're not a Christian. Stop saying you are. I don't go to church every Sunday. I'm not well versed in the Bible, but yet I have the belief system where that's what I believe. So it's almost like an American kind of comparison, because you'll have some Americans that are just like it's like they blindly believe in God. I do have some blind belief to that degree, and it's just there. I don't know how to explain it more than that.
Well, it's because you're surrendering yourself to your ideals and your beliefs, right? It doesn't need to make sense. It doesn't need to be explained. It's just a connection that you have, that it's something that you feel, like the word God is mentioned as your example, or just the idea of God or whatever. You feel a connection to that. You have an understanding of that at its principles and at its cores. That's where you have your fundamental understanding of everything, and that's all you need. Whereas you have certain people in certain parts of the world that will suggest that you have to read the whole entire Bible, and you have to know, Luke whatever verse here, and John 3:16, which I only know because of Austin 3:16, because he ripped it off from John 3:16. Great promo. But it's one of those things where you don't have to explain it. You don't have to be like a Ned Flanders. You don't have to be like live your life to the identity of religion in its true and fullest most. Because currently, and this is a question I have for you too, how do you feel about the ideals and practices of how a Christian is supposed to go about their life, especially in today's society? Because in my opinion, a lot of the fundamental beliefs and such just don't apply to today's modern day. I feel like it's very antiquated. What's your thoughts on that?
I feel it's at a point where, as a Christian, society needs to be accepted, and it is kind of built into a lot where we're trying to save people from condemnation and whatnot. And how can we? Because it's just so overwhelmed. Like I'm talking about drug addiction, just like homelessness, all of that stuff. Like we could pray for it, and that's about the best we got. The devil in our life is overwhelming at this point. When you look at just the way things are, the devil's accepted a lot more than it was 20 years ago. Whether it's in media, whether it's in life, whether it's in just general conversation, people will sometimes respect the idea of the devil more than the idea of a God, right? So there's also that too. I don't know, it's hard to explain, I guess.
Sure.
I kind of got lost in the in the moment there.
It's okay.
But yeah, it is hard, because like I admit there's times in my life where I want to just, like, I call it, you walk down the street and you want to just like start saving people, like bring people to church, you want to do all of that. But I've had some times where even I'm going to church and I see the people around me and I go, this isn't the place for me. And that doesn't mean that I can't have a connection with God. I learned that, where there's a lot of people, like you said, if you're not going to church every day, you didn't read the whole Bible, you don't belong here.
Yeah, you're a sinner. You had unprotected sex before marriage and stuff like that, or you consume cannabis and whatnot.
One of the interactions was, my wife was pregnant, and I was at this one church. We were really at home with this church, and I think we went 5 or 6 times or something. And there's a spot by the coats where they put name tags for people, so you can just like stick it on your shirt. Well, all of a sudden we've got name tags, and I'm like, whoa, that's really cool. That's really cool. That's really cool. Like, I remember I like froze for a minute and I was like, that's really awesome. Yeah. Take my coat off, put on my name tag. Right.
Torque. Oh my God. What was that?
What?
I just like coughed there for a second. Torque. Oh, wow. There it is again. Fuck, I'm really sorry. Continue.
But yeah, I was really stoked on that. And she ended up, she was pregnant, and she was sick. She couldn't show up to some of the services. So it was like about 3 or 4 Sundays in a row. She just couldn't show up because she was so sick. She actually had to have medication to prevent her from being sick, like, and it wasn't working that well. Well, it turned into, like, well, why is she not coming to church? And we got this vibe. And then all of a sudden the name tags are gone. Like, and I was just kind of like, okay, like, you know what I mean? And that's where I kind of went, there's no understanding to kind of what's going on with us. God understands. God gets it. Like, God's there. He's looking over all of us. He knows what's going on with all of us. And they're kind of in their own, like, well, they haven't been here, that, like, they should only get a name tag if they're here all the time or something, whatever's going on. And I remember that was kind of the slow start to where we weren't really as accepted in that church. And so we just started doing our own thing, where it was right around when streaming was happening with churches. So I'll watch Sunday service on the computer, or I'll have quotes on my phone. I'll go to church when I want to, but there's still that aspect of you're dealing with people, like, and they even say it at church. They'll say it. They'll be like, there's at least one person in here that's not full of the Holy Spirit, and they mean someone that's just full of shit, and, like, they're just evil in their fucking character and they don't know it. That's true. It's like going into a class. You got 5 people that are just jerks. You know what I mean? And that happens in church too. And nobody thinks that at all as a Christian. We're all perfect people and everything. But
That's what I can't stand about religion, is
yeah.
I cannot stand that false belief that they're fucking perfect people because they live by what a book has told them to live. I just don't agree with that. You're not perfect, because there's no such thing as the perfect person.
No, and that's the one where I would get confused at times, and certain pastors couldn't answer this question. It's just they're living so hard in trying not to sin, and if you look at sins, like, you can't go a day without sinning. You can't, because in the Bible it's so defined. I think there's even one passage where it's like doing a number 2 could be classified as a sin, right? And it's not about not sinning. Like, you're not going to purposely go out and see how many sins you can break today. Like, you know what I mean? You're going to live your life normally. You ended up sinning in some way. You looked at the girl with the tits, or, you know what I mean, or something, right? You laughed when someone hurt themselves on America's Funniest Home Videos, right?
The girl with
Well,
the
then
tits.
realize what you did was wrong. You talk about it. It's to be forgiven. That's what it is. It's about being forgiven, being accepted. It's not about sitting your life with like a stick up your ass and trying to follow every rule down to the T. And then when you slip, you're beating yourself up, or you're trying to be forgiven when you should know you're forgiven from the go. You should know, like, you admitting that what you did wrong is forgiven. You need to move on, build yourself up, and be better through the passage of Christ. Okay. So, and that's what I mean is it's that it, and if it's not, that's how I've seen it. It's not a ticket to just go and do bad shit. It's, you live your life normally, and you realize that what you did was wrong. It's like getting in an argument with somebody. You look in a bit and you go, okay, well, I said something wrong. I'm going to go and I'm gonna address this, and this is how it's going to work. It's, I hate saying this phrase because of the Weird Al video. It's turning the other cheek, literally, right? Like, you have to be able to forgive people, and it's hard to forgive them. And the forgiveness isn't just letting them do bad things, it's part of moving on. So that was another one I learned too. Like, there was people that I felt did really bad things to me, and the solution was to forgive them. And I was like, I can't do that. I want to just lose it on these people. But I just literally focused on how I can forgive them because of their own thought processes, or just what they're going through in life, what's brought them to the conclusion to discredit me or say whatever wrong, and I forgive them. And it's like clearing the toxic person out of your life, but mentally. Yeah.
So at this point, if you have any questions for me, start asking me some stuff.
So if you're like, you've got feelings of loneliness, where, the times where I guess I'll paint the picture. You're walking down the rainy road at night, the cell phone's dead, you're thinking of some bad thoughts maybe, or you're depressed. What do you turn to?
Um, currently in that same scenario, it would have to be, I hate to say this, nothing. And I know it's going to be a bit of a surprising answer, because I think where you were thinking I was going to go with it was I was going to tap into like my spiritual nature or my belief in universe. No, okay,
I was
because
thinking I was thinking meditation. I was thinking meditation, like maybe you'd sit somewhere calm and start meditating.
sure,
That was my thought, but I didn't know, to be honest.
yeah, to be honest with you, I don't really have that something that when the times get tough, because depression's such it's never the same thing, if that makes sense. Depression is never the same thing. So those times where like you're sad or you're depressed or you're anxious, it's never the exact same thing. It's variations of a similar thing. So I could be, cell phone is dead, walking down the middle of the street and it's pissing rain and I'm at my lowest, and I'm probably just in my own head with a million and one thoughts scattering in real time, all overlapping one another. Like, for example, like, this sucks, or this is fucked up, or I can't wait to get home. Oh my God, I'm so wet. This really, I'm really not enjoying this. I wish my phone was going, blah, 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 but on like an even faster scale, because I can't replicate the speed. I don't even think Eminem could replicate the speed. It's like using my voice on tape and putting the speed up to 100. And that's what it's like walking down the street in this scenario. So, but what I try to do is I do try to do at points when I get too overwhelmed, when I can really realize and take in that I'm being overwhelmed, I can do like breathing techniques, or I will, yeah, like you touched on, meditate, if it's really, really, really bad. But it's kind of a disappointing answer. But yeah, there's not really much I do other than get sucked into the moment.
See, and now this is where I'm going to go two angles. Now the sell, if I wanted to sell God to you, okay, this is where I go, well, don't you wish you had something there you could reach onto? And then your answer would be, well, yeah. And then that's where you go, Jesus Christ. And that to me, I find offensive. If I was to approach you with that sell, it's like I disregard everything you said to me. And I'm like, there's the magical pill and it's going to solve everything for you. Do you get what I mean?
I totally understand what you mean,
Yeah.
because I've had different instances of flirting with religion over the years, trying to, because I personally feel like everyone looks for something to believe in. And I know I'm ripping off the Poison song at that point, but it's true. I think we all just want something to believe in, whether it's God, whether it's the powers of the universe, whether it's aliens, whether it's, reptile people in office and government. Everyone wants something to believe in. That's why this COVID stuff and all these different things are going so crazy, because people want to take sides and believe things, and go forth with their beliefs and be proud and powerful about it. And the one thing I didn't appreciate about the religious experiences that I incorporated with Christianity was very much just like you said. It's a complete dismissal of everything that's going on in your life, but you got God, you got Jesus Christ. Your car breakdown, no worries, JC's got your back. You lose your job, your wife just left you, this and that, just turn to God. And while it's great to have that comfort of when something is going on, you can rely on your belief system to get you through it. I just hate the fact that it's used as a mask and you're not dealing with the problem at hand. I feel like there's a lot of suppression in religion, and I don't like that.
Well, and that brings me up to another one where, like I said, the sell. And then what I do, as if I actually genuinely wanted you to say start approaching God or whatnot, I'd be letting you know that God's not going to solve your problems. God's not going to do it for you. You have the strength to do this yourself, and God's given you that strength. Now, whether you believe in God or not, you're going to take that as positive, because I've like reassured you that you've got the strength to get through this. You might
Yeah,
think that it's God, because I believe that, right? But I had a few of the different approaches where it's like I said, it was just like, well, do you want your life to be better? It's all God. And some people feel like, well, you have something burdening you, let God take care of it. That only works so much. And like what I'm saying is, it's like there's a raw steak on the counter, right? Like you got to get up and cook it. You know what I mean? Like you can't just throw away your problems and be like, well, God's going to take care of it. Or the other one is born again Christians. I've got a few friends that have those as relatives where they've done a lot of bad stuff, and then they go in and they're born again, they get baptized, and their slate's wiped clean. And that's what they tell everyone. You go up to them and go, hey man, you know what you did to me when I was a kid? That really messed with my head. And they're like, I'm a born again Christian, I've been forgiven. So that means nothing. Move along. And it's just like they can do whatever they want. I can't stand that one either.
I can't
Because
stand that either.
how many times can you be born again if you really wanted to, right?
You're
And you
using
just
religion as an excuse at that point.
yeah. So those are good things that we were able to talk about, because I do have this sense where I don't want people to think that I'm just sold on the Bible, like trying to like sell people on this, but I want them to know that I do believe in God. So and I feel like that was, we talked about that really
Yeah,
well.
yeah. It's even just, we're not here to talk about religion to get you on religion. I'm not religious, and I'm not going to be sold on all of a sudden fucking kneeling at my bed at night and praying to fucking God and going to church tomorrow based off this conversation. But I think it's cool to have two different introspective looks into religion and kind of coming together to have those conversations, because that's what's missing in the world right now, is that failure to understand your fellow man. And that's what I wanted to do here. I just want to understand where you're coming from. I want to understand why you believe what you believe. It doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to just start emulating you and taking after your belief system. And I don't expect any of our listeners are just going to be fucking now devout Christians that are going to be, born again and all that stuff. But I think these kind of conversations are cool to have. So, and your point that you made about born agains, talking from a pro wrestler, Shawn Michaels, right?
Oh yeah.
Shawn Mike,
Degeneration X.
yeah, Degeneration X. He's a degenerate. They named that group after him because he was really a degenerate. When he was coming up and that was at the top of his game, he was the biggest piece of shit backstage, and everybody hated him. And he was just on a wrecked down path and screwing over everybody he can. And then he went away for a little while, and then he found God. And the difference between him and other people, which is refreshing with Shawn, is that there's been so many documentaries talking about the instances like the Montreal screw job with Bret Hart and all the other different things he's done wrong in life. And he owns all of it. He doesn't necessarily recollect and remember all of it due to a lot of it being in drug-induced comas, et cetera, but he owns all of it, and he does not excuse it, and he doesn't push his religion down anyone's throat. And he even participates on some angles. Well, he did, because they brought back Degeneration X at one point while he's now a devout Christian and whatnot. And there were certain lines he wouldn't cross, but there were certain little lines where it's like, yeah, you know what? Because he still swears, he still says fuck and this and that. And to me, people like yourself and Shawn Michaels and so on and so forth, those are Christians I can respect. The ones I don't respect are the ones that look down on you and judge you. But the worst ones are the ones that do all that and openly be fake about being nice to you because they believe that's what their God intends them to be. I've been in a room with a bunch of these people, and it's like the movie, trying to think of the title right now, Pleasantville. It's like Pleasantville, where everyone's like, how you doing today, Stu? Everything's good in your world? Even though internally they're like, oh my God, this person's a devil worshiper and he has a Baphomet statue in his room and so on and so forth. I can't stand religious people like that shun you and treat you a certain type of way. So I very much respect people like yourself, and that's why I'm like, you know what, I'm going to use our platform to have this conversation.
You basically described Mormonism.
Oh Lord, that's
I
all.
went. I decided to go
No pun intended.
to one of those services. I was invited, and I wanted to know about it. And yeah, there. It's very, when people say it's cult like, I truly believe that. You're when you're sitting in the church, all the songs, there's no upbeat stuff. It's very low toned, very kind of like
It's scary. I'll be very honest with you.
yeah.
It's scary. It freaks me out. Like horror and devil imagery and stuff like that. That doesn't scare me. It doesn't spook me. What spooks me is all that like convulsive shit on stage and stuff like that, and using snakes and being weirdos about the religion. That and
Tongues. So tongues, you're talking tongues. That was another trigger for me. Okay,
weird
so
horror.
I'm in this one church. Okay, now me, I I kind of stand on the fence with tongues. Because in their mind, God's communicating through you in a language no one understands but himself. Okay. So in this, when you're taught that, then you'll be introduced to people that can define God's language. So it was so much for me, because whether God is actually using these people as vessels to communicate, the person that's interpreting it could be literally anybody, and he's standing there thinking that the person going is we're gonna have the second coming of Christ. But like tongues is just something that's just constantly confused me. And I remember sitting in a room, and I was like, well, how's it work? Like, do I just start? I'm like, do I just start? Do I just start? Like,
Yeah,
and they're like, well,
convulsing.
it comes to you. It comes to you. And to be honest, all that comes to you is it's like a chant. Okay. So you're in a room with people chanting and you feel comfortable, you're going to start chanting similarly. And that's kind of what it was. It was, so I don't disrespect the people that talk in tongues, but they're definitely in their own category for me, to where I'm a little distant, because I don't know if the message is being interpreted correct, or if it's being fed wrong. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, you're getting the wrong hotline number calling you saying that they're the pizza guy today. That's actually like a fucking guy who's going to give you a poison pizza. You just don't know yet. Like, whether God's communicating or not, how do you know you're not getting this message from someone who's possessing somebody?
Because when you behavior,
when you have a possession, you're doing similar things. And so then you got me who's asking a priest, well, when you're possessed by like the devil and stuff, they have similar things. And then like now they're like doing these similar things. Like, how do you know? And it's kind of a politely like, you're insane, or you need to find a way to like get out of our church and just stop coming, because you're asking complex questions. Like, when I said to them, I was like, how do I know that God's talking to me, or if it's my conscience?
What they say to that?
I left about 10 of them stumped. They couldn't think of anything. And the answer was, it's like, your conscience is your mind guiding you to do basic things in life. God would be giving you, like, you'd be hearing a message from God uniquely, kind of thing, was the answer. But these other people, they're like, they didn't want to admit that it's not your conscience talking to you, or that it is. You know what I mean? Because then I'd be going around and be like, God told me to do this. When really I just finished playing Grand Theft Auto for 5 minutes, right?
I shot up the whole block because God told me to do it.
Yeah, it's my conscience. It's everything I'm thinking in my mind. So
ain't nothing to it. God made me do it.
But I had these hard-hitting kind of questions, and that's where I kind of filtered through and knew where to go. So I look at anything out of this is, if anyone's curious about any religion, just dive deep and be outspoken. Like, if you got a question, ask it, or else you're going to be sitting in a room humming. You know what I mean? Because you don't want to ask the questions, or you're going to go home lost. You got to explore, like, and be willing to grow. Like, if I read a book and all of a sudden I'm having a connection with some spiritual entity, I'm paying attention to that. That's part of growth. You know, in 10 years, I might not be a Christian. Who knows? Who's to say?
It's very true. Feelings are fleeting. They change so often. That's another thing as a society that we have to start appreciating, understanding, and accepting is that nothing is forever. Feelings aren't forever. We'd like them to be. In certain cases, they can be. As an example, I'll always love my dad. There's nothing he can do at this point that would like that he's capable of that would deter me from ever loving him. Or my dogs that are no longer with us, I'll always love them. I'll always love them. So there's certain things that can be forever, but this podcast is not forever. Eventually one day we'll stop doing this podcast. My job's not forever. My life's not forever. Nothing is guaranteed. So that notion that we all have to accept this forever, and when it doesn't happen and it just destroys us, that's part of the problem, is accepting the fact that everything is forever. Because like you said, you might wake up one day and be thinking to yourself, this ain't it for me. My relationship with God is on hold, and and it could go in so many different ways in so many different directions. So I can appreciate that you said that. But before we go, is there anything else you want to ask me before I'll wrap up and ask you something?
Just your connections with because I'm completely new to it, so it might come across as ignorance. But the stones and everything, like you have a connection with that. Like certain stones will make you feel calm. Certain stones. Is there negative energy that could be found from certain stones, or are they all positive?
There can be negative reactions towards certain stones depending. I'm from the mind frame of whatever energy, like, here's the thing with stones, they carry energy. You can clear that energy. And usually when you purchase them, the energy is cleared from them before it's passed on to you. And I feel like whatever energy you put into that stone is what you're going to receive in return. And I feel that way about everything in life. I feel like that's how the universe works. You get what you put in. I am more than positive that if I had more drive and kick my own ass more on certain things, that I could be in a much better place in life that I'm at right now. However, I don't. But I'm still putting in a good amount of effort, so I'm getting a good amount in return. Same concept with the stones. I know there's certain stones, and this will actually be in relation to your knowledge of Christianity. You don't know the Bible inside and out. Well, there's a crystal Bible. I don't know that thing inside and out. I own it. I've read through it, and I don't know. As an example, I have a golden healer heart right here. Shout out to Ari who gave this to me. Thank you so much. It's one of my favorite stones. I love it. I know that it has healing properties to it, but I don't know bit by bit what it really does or what it's capable of or anything like that, because it's my belief on what it's going to do for me. That's how I feel about stones and crystals and whatnot. Pink quartz, right? That's an example. That's like love and this and that. I don't always relate to it for those sort of things, right? And certain stones are meant for certain astrological signs to be more powerful than others. And that rule doesn't apply to me either.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I was just wondering about those things. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just like I said, it's just more so a connection that you build. What else? Is there anything else?
No, that was about it, honestly. I can't really think of anything more.
Yeah, I really relate to how you relate to religion, like how I relate to spirituality. And in 2019, I've told this story before, and I'll tell it very briefly, very, very briefly. So in 2019, went through a bad breakup and looked myself in the mirror, and that's when I started really asking questions about myself. And when you do that, you unlock Pandora's box. And I was working up the street from a place called Nature Spirit here in Milton, Ontario. Shout out to the fine ladies that work there. If you're from the area and you're into metaphysical, please go and shop with them. They're amazing, amazing people. I walked into the store one day because I've seen other stores like it, and it always kind of intrigues me a little. I'm a Pisces, and I'm naturally attracted to water. So when I see those stores that have like those really neat water fountains and things like that, and I'm really into incense, and they really help change my mood, the smells. So when I walk past a store like that and I see those kind of things, I always get curious, but then, going back to a conversation that we had in the previous episode is the whole poser thing. I felt like I didn't belong in there because I don't understand any of it, so I don't belong in there. But with Nature Spirit, something compelled me to just walk in that day. And I walked in that day and I spoke with who's now a very good friend of mine, Susan, who's also my spiritual advisor. But she immediately was very kind to me and was very warm and very welcoming. And I played around with a clear quartz on a necklace and I was very attracted to it. And 2 weeks later, I went back and bought it. And Susan remembered my name. I only dealt with her one time. And with someone with such a poor memory, that was very impressive to me. And then I felt compelled to other things in the store. And I couldn't explain to you why. I wasn't even considering even thinking about the universe in a whole and my connection with spirituality or none of that. I didn't even realize I was entering into a super spiritual store. I just, I didn't really think anything of it. I just didn't understand it. But I felt like every time I went in, I kept getting called to something. And then I get called to a singing bowl. And a singing bowl is a tool that's used to clear energy of whatever, mainly crystals and whatnot. You put it inside the bowl, you tap the side of the bowl, you use it, it's used as an instrument as well, even. So I wanted one of those to charge up my crystals because I started to feel like I could feel the energy off the crystal when I wore it. And I could feel that eventually it just wasn't giving me the same oomph. And it turns out they're like cell phones. They require recharge or clearing of energy or restoring energy, if you will. So then I started getting into that and then it led to I've got the singing bowl now in this necklace, and I'm looking behind at the calendar, and Susan offers different workshops and different classes. And one of the things that she offered was group meditation. And then I started that, and that unlocked everything. I had my very first night of meditation, and I left that day, and I told the person that I was with that if there was a religion, I just entered into what I would start to believe in. Because then I started to develop my connection with the universe and things outside of here. It's like my body went to a unique place that it's never been to before, and it came back. So that's what started me on my fascination with all this stuff. But it's all been attraction first, education second. And sometimes the education doesn't always come into play. Sometimes I don't care. Sometimes it's like I don't need to be explained this because it doesn't matter to me. And that's what I was venting about in our previous episode, where everyone gives people shit to Kim Kardashian because of her wearing a Cannibal Corpse shirt or whatever. It's like, who cares? She's attracted to it. Who cares? Why are we shaming people for their attraction on things? Why does everyone have to be a professor on everything they're attracted to? Why can't we just be attracted to it and not explain it? It doesn't need to be explained. It's like sports. I can't explain to you why I was attracted to sports. I was 3 fucking years old when I got into sports, and it's because of my dad and how it was introduced. But just because my dad had it on the TV doesn't necessarily mean that I'm going to connect with it. And that's the thing. Connection to spirit or God never needs to be explained. It doesn't have to be a certain way. It doesn't have to be put in a certain box. And that's why I appreciated this conversation so much today, because we were really able to highlight that from both, more so from the religious and Christian side. And there's so much more that we could talk about with this. And we're going to on episodes in the future. But as we shut down the shop here, it's just that's my message that I wanted to present to people today, that whether you believe in the universe, whether you believe in God, as long as what you believe in is healthy and not hurting nobody, you don't have to explain it. It's cool when you get answers when they come to you, but anyone that's ever looking for something, whether it's you're looking for God or you're looking for just something to believe in, just know that you don't have to know everything about it right away. Because I was like that at start. I'm like, I need to know, I need to be an expert on all this stuff. And you don't. It doesn't make you a poser. It doesn't make you any lesser of a believer to the next person that knows everything. just enjoy it and let the messages come to you. If it's God, let God speak to you. If it's the universe, let the universe speak to you. If it's, you know, whatever it is you believe in, just let it speak to you and let it come to you when it's time. Because in my belief system, the universe presents you with whatever you need to know when you need to know it. Everything happens for a reason. There's nothing that just starts happening for no reason. It's all a message. Even us having this conversation today is happening for a reason. And that could be we reach one single solitary person that needed to hear this, or people that just think differently about Christians in a whole, because they're not all Ned Flanders. They're not all, you know, the main characters from Seventh Heaven. It's not like that. Not everything you see is what it is. So that's my message. Any final thoughts on this?
They snorted mints on Seventh Heaven. That was a hilarious episode.
I don't recall that, because you know what? Even for it being like a wholesome Christian show, I still watched it. It was a great show. And I don't recall anyone sniffing mints.
Yeah, I remember watching it on like daytime TV or some shit, and then it's all of a sudden the like kids started like crushing up these mints and snorted them or whatever. It was hilarious. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
But yeah, that was all I had, I had to throw in there with that.
What a final thought. Yeah, that's a great final thought, and wraps all this up here with a nice little bow. Reminder that tomorrow the winner is going to be announced for the Amazon giveaway. Stay tuned for that. You will be tagged. You will be, we will reach out to you via the DM. And other than that, I'm your Canadian Talkin Shop, Stu Francis.
I'm Mike Berikoff from Cutlet House, signing off.
I'm back next week, and here's Talk More Shop, baby.